We just had Peter Dutton say that all migration, humanitarian visas from Gaza should be paused at the moment. Anthony Albanese said, well, Gaza, you can't get anyone out of Gaza at the moment anyway, and all checks are done by ASIO. Why is it necessary to have an immediate ban, however temporary, at the moment?
Well, you can see why the coalition opposition is concerned about this. It was only 10 days ago or so that Mike Burgess, the head of ASIO, raised the threat level to probable. Yet we heard at Senate estimates that some of the visitor visas that have been issued from those coming from Gaza had security checks that had taken less than 24 hours, had been approved in less than 24 hours, some in as little as 1 hour. This is an area that has a government, Hamas is their government, and that has been identified by this parliament, by this government, as a terrorist organisation.
Okay,
we want to make sure that those that we are bringing here aren't raising the terrorist threat
here to the increase in the terrorist threat to probable to the humanitarian visas that have been issued for people in Gaza and that are now here in Australia? Is that a direct link?
Well, what I would like to say is that Australia has been extraordinarily generous in its humanitarian visas, particularly for those coming out of war zones in the past. And you think of, Tony Abbott's offer to Syrian refugees to come here, I think it was an additional 12,000 at the time. That's really important. But this is a fast-moving and highly febrile environment.
Yeah.
If the security checks can't be done adequately, it puts Australians at risk. Now, that's why
But do you think they have been done adequately?
Have signed a letter to Tony Burke.
Yeah.
Well, we heard that if they've been done in 24 hours and some as little as an hour, it's kind of hard to imagine that they have been. Certainly not to the satisfaction of the coalition and to ordinary Australians. That's why we've written that letter to Tony Burke.
Sorry, yes. Sorry, really sorry to interrupt you here, but we're just tight for time, and I just want to be really clear on this because you get briefings that I don't. So have you been given assurances by ASIO or anyone in government that, the risk, the terror risk being moved to probable is not because of the visas that have been issued out of Gaza and those people now in Australia? Is there a direct link there?
Well, that's not a briefing that I have received.
Right.
But I think that the ASIO boss was perfectly clear that the threat level has been raised in Australia. There are lots of hotspots around the world, but this is one of them. We want to be generous with our humanitarian regime, but at the same time, we have an obligation to keep Australians safe. We have asked Tony Burke, the new minister, to make sure that ASIO does appropriate checks of those, that to cease all, temporarily, cease all visitors from Gaza, from that area, without unless they can be assured that there's those appropriate checks. But more importantly, those that have already come here, to make sure that they are retrospectively have security checks to make sure that all Australians
So you want to make sure
this is really
that they have new checks, and that should happen intermittently, maybe every 6 months or 12 months? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's up to our intelligence and securities agencies.
Right.
I'm not going to tell them how to do their jobs. But that's up to them as to how the appropriate way is to deal with this cohort. But what we're saying is, unless we can be assured that those security checks have been done and that we are not inviting people in that are active supporters of terrorist organisations, particularly Hamas, which we have identified here, well, we can't then be assured that we're keeping Australians safe. That's the government's first job, keep Australians safe. If they can't guarantee that that's the case, well, then there should be a temporary pause on visitors from that area.
Okay, Jane Hume, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Laura.